Welcome to this educational video on various forms of cell death except for apoptosis and necrosis, which includes necroptosis and pyroptosis. There will be the discussion on free radical injury as well. So let's dive into the lecture. Necroptosis is an example of programmed cell death, which is initiated by the engagement of TNF receptors. When these receptors comes in contact with their ligand, there will be the activation of downstream pathway. Okay, so what it is consist of? Firstly, there will be the activation of RIPK1. Okay, it stands for receptors interacting protein kinase 1. This RIPK1 further causes the activation of RIPK3. This RIPK3 causes the phosphorylation of MLKL. Okay, after getting phosphorylated by the RIPK3, MLKL molecules get oligomerized. Okay, so MLKL oligomers are formed. These MLKL oligomers causes the cell membrane damage, which further causes the soiling of cell, and due to the soiling of cell damage occur, and certain inflammatory mediators are released. These inflammatory mediators are involved in the aggregation of lymphocyte and leukocytes at the site of necroptosis, which causes the inflammation. Okay, so there is the inflammation as well in this case. Okay, so necroptosis has the features of both apoptosis, has got the feature of both apoptosis as well as the necrosis. Okay, so necroptosis could either be physiological process as well as the pathological process. Physiologically, necroptosis is involved in the embryonic development. Okay, embryonic development. It is also involved in the tissue repair. Okay, so it is also involved in the tissue repair mechanism. Dysregulation of this necroptosis can lead to the development of various anomalies, which includes various neurodegenerative disorders. Okay, such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson disorder. There will be the development of inflammatory bowel disease or syndrome. Okay, so due to the dysregulation of this necroptosis leads to the development of various anomalies, which includes neurodegenerative pathologies such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson disorders. Also, there will be the development of inflammatory bowel syndrome. So this was all about necroptosis. So let's dive into the pyroptosis. Okay, so pyroptosis is also an example of programmed cell death, but it is caspase dependent. But this necroptosis was caspase independent. Unlike the necroptosis, pyroptosis is the caspase dependent. Okay, so this pyroptosis occurs through the two ways. Okay, firstly, in the first way, what happens? These toll-like receptors are activated. When these toll-like receptors binds with their ligand, okay, this causes the activation of pro-caspase 11 into the caspase 11. This caspase 11 further causes the nuclear damage. Okay, so this was the first way through which pyroptosis occur. Now let's talk about the next. What happens? In the first way, there was the activation of receptors which are implanted within the cell membrane. Now cytoplasmic receptors or intracellular receptors are activated. Okay, these are known as node-like receptors. When these receptors binds with their ligands or any antigen, any foreign antigen rather, when these node-like receptor binds with any foreign antigen, this causes the activation of caspase 1, caspase 2 and caspase 5 into the activated caspase 1, 2 and 5. These caspase further causes the activation of pro-interleukin 1 into the interleukin 1. This interleukin 1 causes the cell membrane damage. Also, this interleukin 1 within the hypothalamus causes the fever. Okay, so it also triggers the fever. So pyroptosis stands for apoptosis alongside fever. Okay, so this was all about pyroptosis. This pyroptosis is mainly involved in the innate immunity. Okay, so it is the part of innate immunity. This point must be memorized. It is the part of innate immunity. Now we are done with the programmed cell death. Now let's move to the another topic which is known as free radical injury. The question must arises in your mind, what is free radical? Free radicals are the chemical species with unpaired electrons in their outermost orbit. Okay, so if unpaired electrons are present in any chemical species, they causes that chemical species more unstable. Okay, so these are also known as reactive oxygen species. The free radicals are also known as reactive oxygen species. So how they are generated, question must arises. They could be generated either through physiological process or through the pathological process. So physiologically, these free radicals are generated due to the partial reduction of oxygen during the oxidative phosphorylation. Okay, so physiologically they are generated due to the partial reduction of oxygen. Okay, so we know that oxygen is the final electron acceptor in the electron transport chain. Okay, so which leads to the formation of water. Due to the partial reduction of oxygen, some intermediates are also formed. These intermediates are superoxides. Okay, so there will be the generation of superoxides. These superoxides then are converted into the hydrogen peroxide. Okay, so this superoxide was highly unstable and had to be converted into the hydrogen peroxide. So this hydrogen peroxide is much stable than the superoxide, and can also transported through the membrane as well. So when this hydrogen peroxide comes in contact with any metal ion, when it comes in contact with, for example, ferric ion. Okay, so ferric ion causes the reduction of this hydrogen peroxide, thereby leads to the formation of hydroxyl ions. Okay, so these hydroxyl ions now acting as the free radicals. So the process involved in the generation of hydroxyl ion known as Penton's reaction. So this point must be clear to you. So this was all about the physiological generation of free radicals. Now let's move to the pathological generation of free radicals, how they are generated pathologically. We know that whenever water surface gets exposed to the ionizing radiations, so suppose this is the water surface, water molecules are present. When these are exposed to ionizing radiations, the water gets hydrolyzed into the hydroxyl ion and proton. So these hydroxyl ions acting as the free radicals in this case. This was the first example of the generation of free radicals through the pathological processes. free radicals are also generated within the macrophages during inflammation. What happens? These macrophages, when engulf any microbes, so during this process phagosome is formed. Okay, the membrane of this phagosome contains an enzyme known as NADPH oxidases. Okay, NADPH oxidases. This NADPH oxidases causes the conversion of oxygen into the superoxide ion. Okay, so this superoxide ion further it is converted into the hydrogen peroxide spontaneously or through the enzyme known as superoxide dismutase. It could be spontaneously or through superoxide dismutase. And now this hydrogen peroxide now combines with the chloride ion, causes the formation of hypochlorite. Hypochlorite is highly unstable and highly reactive compound. Okay, so this hypochlorite is formed. The reaction through which hypochlorite is formed is catalyzed by the enzyme known as myeloperoxidases. Okay, so this enzyme is catalyzed by the myeloperoxidases. This was the second example through which free radicals are generated pathologically. Now let's move to the next example. Okay, so these free radicals are also generated during the carbon tetrachloride poisoning. Okay, so what happens? This carbon tetrachloride within the liver gets metabolized into the CCl3. Okay, so it gets metabolized into the CCl3 by the P450 system of hepatocytes. Okay, this CCl3 causes the peroxidation of, consider this is a cell, this is the hepatocyte. What happens? Due to the metabolism of this CCl3, this CCl3 causes the peroxidation of endoplasmic reticulum membrane. Okay, so it causes the peroxidation of endoplasmic reticulum membrane, due to which the swelling of endoplasmic reticulum occur, and attached to this endoplasmic reticulum are the ribosomes, also starts detaching, due to which the synthesis of proteins, mainly plasma protein, is remarkably decreased. Due to the reduction in the synthesis of plasma proteins, apolipoproteins are also not synthesized, and therefore causes the accumulation of triacylglycerides within the liver cells, within the hepatocytes, and thereby leads to the condition known as fatty liver. So what happens? Due to the swelling of this endoplasmic reticulum, these ribosomes detaches and the protein synthesis stops. Due to the reduction in the or stoppage of this protein synthesis, apolipoproteins are not synthesized. Okay, so these apolipoprotein normally binds with the triacylglycerides and involved in the transports of these triacylglycerides, but due to the lack of these apolipoproteins, these triacylglycerides starts accumulating within the hepatocytes and leads to the condition known as fatty liver. Okay, so this was the third example through which free radicals are generated pathologically. Okay, these free radicals are also generated when metal ions such as ferric ion or copper ion comes in contact with the H2O2. When this ferric ion comes in the contact with H2O2, there will be the generation of hydroxyl ion. Okay, so this was few examples through which free radicals are generated pathologically. So what are the side effects? What are the damaged effect of these free radicals? These free radicals firstly causes the peroxidation of membrane lipid. Okay, so the membrane lipid gets peroxidized due to these free radicals. Okay, due to which aldehydes are formed. These aldehydes then causes the damage to cell further. This was the first side effect. These are the first damaging effects of these free radicals. These free radicals also oxidizes the proteins. Okay, they also oxidizes the proteins, which causes the misfolding in the protein structures. Okay, so this was the second damaging effect or devastating effects. Thirdly, these free radicals damage causes the damage to nuclear chromatin, which leads to the oncogenesis or aging. So we discussed about necroptosis, pyroptosis, and also the generation of free radicals physiologically as well as pathologically. So in the next lecture, we will discuss about the removal of these free radicals, how these free radicals are removed. So thank you for watching. Stay tuned.